The interstate system has been found throughout history to be a very efficient form of transportation, with high-speed vehicular routes connecting major cities across the country. If you want to take a cross-country road trip and aren't interested in flying, you'll likely end up taking a route within the interstate system on your way there. Now, there are other options, including Amtrak, which I took on a trip to Arizona this spring. But honestly, I think I came out of that trip with even more respect for the flexibility and freedom that comes with driving down the interstate system to get where I want to be. Alternatives have been talked about for a while now, with many people in the country pushing for a decrease in car usage and the normalization of other forms of transportation. One of these attempts has been the Marine Interstate System, a not very well known map of waterway routes across the country that is seemingly based off the interstate system and meant to be a competitor. So today I'll tell you all about why it exists, what its purpose is, and what its future is. Before the video starts though, make sure you do subscribe to the channel. I've been making weekly geography content for a while now, so if you appreciate the videos, simply subscribing is the best way to show that, and it helps me out a ton. Thank you. So let's start by asking a simple question. What am I talking about? Well, this is the United States Marine Highway Program. It's a map of waterway routes throughout the US that can be used for boat travel, especially for freight-related uses. The map of routes serves 41 states, with 29 different waterways included through most of the main rivers and coasts in the US, serving 7 of the nation's top 10 metropolitan areas. Now, why do I call it the Marine Interstate System and not the Marine Highway Program like it's actually named? Well, here's a very interesting aspect that you might have noticed while looking at the map. These routes were designated to be named after their respective interstate route to help identify them and sort of communicate that they're a form of transportation much like the interstate system. To me, it shows that this is meant to be the waterway alternative or form of the interstate system, and that's why they made it this way. A few examples are M5, which travels up the Pacific coast, M95, which travels up the Atlantic coast, or M35, which goes up the Mississippi from St. Louis to Minneapolis, as I-35 moves north-south in that region of the country. M84 moves up the Snake River, almost directly along the route of I-84 for most of its existence. There are even interstate waterway spur routes, like M495, which travels up the Potomac River into Washington, D.C., taking its name from I-495, or the Capital Beltway around the D.C. Metro. I could go on and on about this specific map, but you get the gist of it. So let's get into the history and find out why this system of designated waterways exists. So to find that out, we need to go back to 2007, which within the history of urban planning and transportation in this country is actually fairly recent. So this was a time when freeways were continuing to be built in more suburban southern cities, while other cities were beginning efforts to tear down urban freeways. Either way, car ownership continued to rise, and traffic had become a serious problem in plenty of cities across America. The Department of Transportation saw this, and wanted to find ways to decrease the traffic and the wear and tear on major freeways across the country, especially caused by tractor-trailer traffic, or semis. These large vehicles put a lot more stress on roadways than smaller cars, requiring more construction and repairs than they wanted. So there's another argument with better ways to decrease car usage and transport people more efficiently, but this was more about the economics of freight traffic. So the DOT's idea was to encourage an increase in use of the United States' 29,000 miles of navigable waterways. This came with the United States Marine Highway Program. Now this isn't a bad idea at all. Research has shown that transporting by barge or ship is the most fuel-efficient method of transporting goods, being 8 times more efficient than transportation using semi-trucks, and double that of rail. It also isn't limited by traffic congestion or human needs such as food or sleep. Now, since it was founded, the US government has put over $100 million into the marine highway system, finding motor highways with particularly bad congestion, and then creating an alternative to this using a waterway. Now that we've went over a lot of the history and talked about it, let's go over some more of the major routes so you can get to know the system a bit better. Starting with the whole Mississippi River region. M55 is the name from the Delta all the way up to Chicago, being likely the most important route of any in the system. M49 travels through Louisiana through cities like Morgan City and Shreveport. M40 goes through Arkansas into Oklahoma through cities like Little Rock and ending in Tulsa. M29 travels from Kansas City up on the Missouri River to Sioux City, Iowa. M65 is an interesting one, stretching through Alabama, Mississippi, Tennessee, and Kentucky, before connecting into the Ohio River, which is known as M70 from Kansas City to Pittsburgh. The final two I'd like to go over are major ones, being M10 in the Gulf Coast from Brownsville to Tampa, and M90 in the Great Lakes, from Duluth connecting Chicago, Detroit, and Buffalo before moving into Canada on the St. Lawrence River. Now, there really isn't much info out there about how effective this was, but there are plenty of drawbacks that came with the idea of this, which I'll get into now, starting with the directions of these waterway routes. So, America's freight traffic primarily moves east and west, since the country is longer than it is tall. Trucks will go from New York to Chicago, or from Los Angeles to Houston. Obviously, there's plenty of transportation from Miami to New York, but just statistically speaking, that's not where the most traffic moves. Now, there's the problem, since most of these waterway routes and rivers ended up only serving north to south routes. They can't go cross-country east to west, since there's multiple continental divides, one in the Appalachians and one in the Rockies. This splits the US into thirds, meaning you can only really travel 1/3 of the country on their routes before having to find other ways. There are a few other concerns. Firstly, the environmental impact that comes from ballast water, which is already a major issue for boat travel. As well as that, there was concerns from small businesses about how complicated this form of transportation ends up being. With boats, these smaller companies need to work with trucks to transport goods to and from the ports, but then also multiple port authorities, meaning there are 4 different factors instead of just one. It's not as simple and isn't really a viable option for that reason. Looking forward to the future, I think the DOT is going to continue trying to push this the best they can. Currently, the program is managed by the Maritime Administration's Office of Port and Waterways Planning, and they should be managing some more routes in the future, as they continue finding motor highways in need of traffic alleviation, and targeting those highways with water alternatives. I think there could potentially be more focus in growing areas like Texas or California, 2 states that could use that improvement to their traffic situations. And who knows, maybe that change will come from the United States Marine Highway Program, which I think is a really interesting alternative interstate system in the US. Thanks for watching. Thank you to the members this week: Steven Pressman, SB Wielder, Florida Jake, Sir JC17, Alex Williams, Makita Martinoff, Kurt Ainsley, Jerome McCall, KMS162, JL, Bryson, Dominic Psyche, Rosebud 4, Christopher DeAngelis, Darkbird, Pig Pasty, Wolflink73, Snyder Schwein, Benjamin Whitings, Ryan Devins, and Hazev the Wolf. I appreciate you all so much, especially the 2 new members. You guys are really helping out, and it's a really kind thing to do, so thank you so much for that. If you want to become a member, the link is down in the description below. I just completed my first couple weeks of college, so if you want to continue supporting me over the next 4 years, and especially in these first couple semesters financially, this is the best way to do it. You can just simply become a member in the link down in the description below, or the join button next to the subscribe button. Any amount of that money is appreciated. It's all just going to go into my savings. So thank you so much.